Family, freedom, American Family Radio.
Abraham Hamilton III.
If you really want to see the tides turning in our country, can I challenge you and encourage you? If the Lord could grab a hold of us in our family, you would see the tide in our politics turn.
The Hamilton Quarter, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on American Family Radio.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
This is American Family News. I'm Steve Jordahl. Railroad workers secured a deal that will deliver 24% raises and $5,000 bonuses over 5 years, and it will also address some of their concerns about strict attendance rules and time off. The deal, that's retroactive to 2020, will give union members the biggest raises they've seen in more than 4 decades, with 24% raises and $5,000 in bonuses over 5 years. Railroad workers will also now be able to take unpaid days off for a doctor's appointment without being penalized. The 12 unions that had been bargaining with the nation's biggest railroads represent some 115,000 workers. A rail strike could have been devastating to the economy. President Biden made remarks at the White House for Thursday's United We Stand summit, continuing to roll out the fiction that white supremacy is a problem in the U.S.
You know, as a result, our very own intelligence agencies, in the United States of America, have determined that domestic terrorism, rooted in white supremacy, is the greatest terrorist threat to our homeland today.
Conservative pundits say Biden needs to keep up the ruse to keep Democrat voters terrified by the fake threats and are desperate for the failing Democrat Party to rescue them. The president says he's launching a new federal effort to essentially weaponize local schools, law enforcement, and cultural institutions. Republican governors are escalating their practice of sending illegal immigrants without advance warning to Democrat sanctuary cities, including a wealthy summer enclave in Massachusetts and the home of Vice President Kamala Harris in Washington, D.C. They're pressing leaders of self-described welcoming cities and highlighting their opposition to Biden administration border policies. The governors of Texas and Arizona have sent thousands of migrants on buses to New York, Chicago, and Washington, D.C. in recent months. But the latest moves include 2 flights to Martha's Vineyard Wednesday, paid for by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. The Republican winner at Tuesday night's New Hampshire Senate primary will now try to send the Democrat incumbent home. FN's Chad Groening has more.
Retired Army Brigadier General Donald Bolduc has won the GOP Senate primary and will face incumbent Democrat Maggie Hassan, who has been viewed by many pundits as vulnerable in the general election. Rob Chambers is vice president of AFA Action.
She's a radical liberal there in New Hampshire. She was endorsed by Planned Parenthood. She's just a flat-out radical pro-abortion advocate. People are seeing our country fall apart before them. They're seeing the failed policies of a Democratic president. And so I think it's really going to have a negative impact on Democrat candidates in the general election.
Chambers says Hassan only led Bolduc by 1 point in a poll conducted by the University of New Hampshire.
There's a possibility there, at least according to that poll, that Maggie Hassan might actually lose. It's possible that Maggie Hassan goes home.
Though Bolduc wasn't formally endorsed by former President Donald Trump, he believes Trump won the 2020 election and questioned the mask mandates that were in place during the pandemic. Former President called Bolduc a, quote, strong guy, tough guy. I'm Chad Groening.
Alabama's not ready, after all, to try a new untested method of capital punishment. Fox's Steve Rappaport has the story.
Alabama's corrections commissioner in a court filing says the state cannot execute a triple murderer next week by nitrogen hypoxia, but the corrections department is ready to proceed with a lethal injection for Alan Miller. Alabama and 2 other states authorized nitrogen hypoxia, which replaces oxygen with nitrogen, though it has never been used to put a prisoner to death. Miller is suing to block his lethal injection, claiming prison staff lost paperwork in which he chose nitrogen hypoxia for his execution. The state attorney general's office says there's no evidence of Miller completing or submitting any form indicating his preference. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
The interest rate that the government pays to raise money, known as the Treasury yield, is rising, and it spooked investors on Thursday. The Dow lost 173 points, the Nasdaq gave up 167, and the S&P 500 took 44 2/3 points off the table. Find more news and information online at afn.net. For American Family News, I'm Steve Jordan.
Thoughts of the child you were carrying keep pouring over in your mind, and the loss is overwhelming. A deep, unrelenting sadness overshadows your days, and you wonder if you will ever feel whole again. But there is hope and healing from an abortion. Call the International Helpline, 866-482-LIFE, and talk with someone who has been where you are. 866-482-LIFE.
Darkness is not an affirmative force. It simply reoccupies the space vacated by the light.
This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
It should be uncomfortable for a believer to live as a hypocrite.
Delivering people out of the bondage of mainstream media and the philosophies of this world.
God has called you and me to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment. Let's not miss our moment.
And now, the Hamilton Corner.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning into the Hamilton Corner. I'm your host, Abraham Hamilton III. This is the American Family Radio Network. I am grateful for you tuning into the program. I am joined today by the full corner contingent. Right across from me in studio is none other than my man, 100 grand, Mr. Bobby Rosa. And y'all don't even know, Bobby was retired, twice retired. He said, I'm not ready to get out the fray. This man relocated from the Northeast in order to join us. And I'm grateful to have him. To my left, what y'all laughing at? They're laughing at me. Oh. And to my left, your friendly, recovering neighborhood Woodaholic is sitting next to producer extraordinaire, Mr. J. Mack, who's often imitated but never duplicated. And we're ready to rock and roll with today's edition of the program. Many of you, if not most of you, are making that transition at this very moment from your part-time jobs, where you generate an income, to your full-time jobs, which is where you cultivate an outcome. And as you do so, where'd he go?
He quit.
As you make that transition from your part-time jobs to your full-time jobs, I want to encourage you to do so with full intentionality, understanding that what goes on in your house is far more important than what goes on in the White House. Guys, this is such a sobering but true statement. It doesn't mean what happens in the White House is unimportant. Absolutely not. The things that happen there are very, very important. But they are not more important than what goes on in your home. For too long, many of us have been lost in the sauce into thinking that, you have to burn the proverbial candle on both ends. We've sacrificed any number of experiences and direct investment in our homes only to wake up one day and realize, man, where did the time go first? And secondarily, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say some variation of this. I thought all I needed to do was bring my children to church. Only to awaken to a very, very rude awakening, realizing, man, the word has been working feverishly to infiltrate your home and disciple your children away from you and the way of Christ. My prayer, my hope, man, is that Hamilton Corner listeners stop that from transpiring and reverse it and understand the opportunity to exercise our Lord's commission starts right in our own homes. Do not assume because your children may be raised in a Christian environment that they, as a result, are born-again believers by osmosis. If you are not a believer, or if you are a believer but hadn't even considered the reality that your children need to hear the gospel, let me encourage you to proclaim the gospel to your children. If they're church children, proclaim the gospel to your children. Examine the fruit of those who profess to be believers. Hold yourselves and your children up to the standard that Christ has established for us. And I am telling you, man, if Christ would grab a hold of us, if he could grab a hold of us and our families, I have no concern as to what could happen within our nation. I am fully persuaded as to what could happen because the scripture, first and foremost, shows what happens when even a minority of people become born again, you know? And if you're in a position where you have access to extended families, nieces, nephews, cousins, grandchildren, take full advantage of the opportunities that you get, man. We must have an all hands on deck approach and understanding. The time that we have is short. It's short. All right, to the word of God we'll go. James chapter 1 is where we're going to start. James chapter 1. And let me add into my conversation about ministry at home. Don't neglect your spouses, man. I was talking to somebody just yesterday at my own house, and they said one of the best gifts you can give your children is a vibrant, thriving marriage between you. In my instance, obviously, I'm my wife's husband, my wife and I. For them to get a living and breathing illustration of how Christ interacts with his bride. It will model for them what they should desire or what they should seek to become, both. That's one of the greatest gifts you can give them, man. Make sure we prioritize our marriages, even before our children. You know, I told you guys before, I endeavor when I come home, after I leave here, after having done the show, first person I'm trying to greet is my wife. That's the first person who I'm trying to greet. My children know that daddy's going to go for mommy first. And they understand because that is the priority. God first, then mommy, then the children. They understand that. All right, James chapter 1, verses 19 through 24 is where we're going to go. James chapter 1, verses 19 through 24. This is what the word of God says. This you know, my beloved brethren, but everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God. Therefore, putting aside all filthiness and all that remains of wickedness, in humility receive the word implanted. Some translations there say engrafted, which is able to save your souls. But prove yourselves doers of the word, and not merely hearers who delude themselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks at his natural face in a mirror. For once he has looked at himself and gone away, he has immediately forgotten what kind of person he was. Now, the Lord is consistently reminding me of scripture like this because as you're witnessing things happening, I mean, I'm going to get into a story later in the program where you literally see you're witnessing the apparatus of our national government, which is funded by our federal tax dollars, and specifically the law enforcement arms of our national government being weaponized and used for political purposes. And this is something, and I know this is like pie in the sky talk, but this is something that all Americans should have an issue with. When you see the federal law enforcement apparatus employed and weaponized and utilized for political purposes, it should cause everybody to stand up and take note and be like, nah, we don't need that. Because it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, well, what if the person that you don't want to win gets in office and they do the same thing against the person you like or the people you want to support? But I got a story I'm going to get to where the FBI has been spying on the private messages of Facebook users. Yeah, private messages. Specifically, people who've used private messages to express their, how shall I say, reluctance to believe that the 2020 presidential election was a free and fair election. Those who've expressed disdain or anger that has occurred. When that kind of stuff happens and you learn it, I'll speak for myself. That kind of stuff makes me mad. It makes me mad. And as I said, even people who may disagree with me politically should be willing to agree with me on that. But Sam Harris told the whole story. Man, listen, we don't care what we got to do. As long as we get our electoral prerogatives accomplished, we don't care how we get there. You know, that's just one. We'll get to that later on. It can make you upset. But I want to remind you that emotions are horrible leaders. They're horrible generals. They're great servants. They're great aides, but they should never lead and guide or drive our engagement. They shouldn't. The word of God stands to remind us that the anger of man operated upon does not produce the righteousness of God. It doesn't, man. I've been saying repeatedly, our mandate, our call is to contend without being contentious. We have to be very intentional and diligent to not allow the very thing that we loathe, we become it. We cannot afford to become the thing we're contending against if we are truly contending, which should remind us that we cannot afford to allow our why to be severed from our what's. Let me explain what I mean. We must always remember, I'm speaking to myself here too, y'all. Like I say, the reason why I engage civically is to keep the door open for the proclamation and propagation of the gospel in my country. I, by God's grace, do not want to allow on my watch the freedoms to proclaim the gospel to be consistently curtailed. So because of that, I endeavor to utilize everything at my disposal, including my American citizenship, to keep the door open for the proclamation of the gospel. The reason why I engage and contend and oppose the sexualization and the ultimate mutilation of the bodies of children in our country is more than just the natural results of those activities, but because of the eternal implications of them. That children reared and cultivated in an environment that welcomes and normalizes rebellion against the ways of God puts children on a course to live in a way that has them destined for hell. I don't want to have to stand before the Lord being keenly aware of that. When the Lord asks me, what did I do with the time he's given me in this earth? That I come up empty with a response. I want to be able to honestly stand before the Lord and say, Lord, I endeavor to do everything at my disposal to keep the door open for the gospel, to proclaim the truth of your word, to keep these innocent babies unscarred from the demented, perverted desires of adults. We have to keep our whys at the forefront, because if not, you could find yourself reeling from what the Apostle James calls the anger of man. The anger of man. It's interesting, or not only interesting, it is instructive that the Apostle James in these verses says, but everyone must be quick to hear and slow to speak. Quick to hear, but slow to anger. And then it contrasts the anger of man with the righteousness of God, almost as if they work against each other. Or to say it more accurately, that the anger of man works against the production of the righteousness of God. Then after making the observation that the anger of man doesn't produce the righteousness of God, verse 21 goes on to say, therefore, in light of this observation and the preceding observations in verses 20 and before, therefore, we now have a duty to put aside all filthiness. James is talking to believers. Put aside all filthiness and all that remains of wickedness. All that remains of wickedness. And in humility, receive the word of the Lord. Brothers and sisters, I know for a fact that that is intentional and it is instructive. That making the observation, yeah, man, there are stuff that there are things that happen that could get you hot, that could make you very, very angry. Very angry. But the anger of man doesn't produce the righteousness of God. I want to be clear, not only unrighteous anger, even righteous indignation. We cannot allow righteous indignation to drive our engagement. What has to drive our engagement is the lordship of the Spirit of God, the truth of God's word, and passion for him that will include a zeal, but the zeal alone is not what's driving our engagement. When Jesus platted the whip and cast out the money changers, you never see anywhere in Scripture where Jesus says, now you go and do that. I know a lot of people like to say, because Jesus did that I can do it. Really? Do you think that's what he's attempting to communicate? Jesus was doing something very specific as the Messiah, as God incarnate, but he never said you should do that or that I should do that. The thing that drives our engagement must be the lordship of the Spirit of God and the truth of his word, and the passion for him should lead into our action, not merely human anger.
Let's see, if something costs less, but people are happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that's MediShare. Maybe you've heard switching to MediShare to pay for healthcare can save the typical family $500 a month, and that's huge, but it's also true that people are way more satisfied after making the switch, too. The customer satisfaction rate for MediShare is double that of the typical health insurance plan. Double. MediShare works. It's been around for more than a quarter century, and members have shared more than $3 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network. So, yeah, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care. So if you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan you're happy with, you can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. A very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. 833-44-BIBLE. That's 833-44-BIBLE. 833-44-BIBLE.
This is Raising Godly Boys with Mark Hancock.
There is a catch-22 of every boy's life. He craves independence and freedom, but he also still wants and needs the attention and approval of his parents. Be sure to set aside some time each week for intentional time with your boy. Invite him on a hike or a fishing trip. Take him along when you need to go pick up something from work. Ask him to help you with a task, like staining the back deck. This isn't the time to pester your son with questions or to lecture him about behavior changes. Allow for comfortable silence and just enjoy the time. Your son may not seem like he appreciates it, but I guarantee you are making a memory with him. No catch-22 about it. To learn more about the 5 critical needs of boys, visit Trail F USA or RaisingGodlyBoys.com.
Free help in raising godly boys is at RaisingGodlyBoys.com. RaisingGodlyBoys.com.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
The credit card debt happened when my daughter was born. I was using one credit card account to roll over into another credit card account, and it was snowballing.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
When I first called Trinity, the representative understood the need based on the situation. They were great people to work with. From the first phone call that I made, they had me on a track to mitigate the credit card debt.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
Working with Trinity gave me the ability to save thousands of dollars. My name's Doug, and thanks to Trinity, I'm debt-free for keeps.
Call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813. That's 1-800-788-1813.
Shining light into the darkness. This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner. Abraham Hamilton III here, Clovis, New Mexico. We're coming your way next weekend, man. This time is flying by. September 24th and 25th. On the 24th, that is a Saturday evening at 6 p.m. local time. I believe that's Mountain Standard Time. Mm-hmm. I will be ministering to the men of Clovis Baptist Church, Clovis Central Baptist Church in Clovis, New Mexico, at their Men's Fall Fellowship. If you want to attend the Fall Fellowship, you have to register. You go to connect2central.com. Just look for the Men's Fall Fellowship tab. It'll be right there in their homepage. You'll see my face. You just click there and you can register. It is $10 per person to attend the Men's Fall Fellowship. And then on that Sunday, September 25th, I will be preaching the sermon at both of their Sunday morning services. So if you're in the area, you're willing to come to the area, you are welcome to join the Central Baptist Church family for worship. Happy birthday, Christy. Well, early. Christy says, my birthday is on the 25th. Well, happy early birthday. I have to revisit this later on. But that will be in Clovis, New Mexico. This will be my first time in New Mexico. So I am looking forward to that. That's right. Yeah. Happy early birthday, Christy. Bobby says it's a pretty state. Bobby, you just trying to shine on me? Bobby trying to humble brag. I just said I've never been to Clovis, I've never been to New Mexico. Bobby says it's a pretty state. Bobby trying to slick side shine on me real quick. I've been there, Abe. Where have you? Humble brag. Oxymoron.
Mostly more.
All right. Yesterday, I shared with you the potential of the railroad strike that was scheduled to begin tonight/Friday morning at midnight. Well, according to reports, and, we did say that was something that very well could happen. The strike that was purported has been averted. So the disagreement between the United States railroad companies, not government entity, let me say that better, railroad companies in the United States and their workers through their unions has come to a halt via a tentative agreement. Now, and I said this yesterday when I talked about this, I still don't get why you have disagreements between railroad workers and their companies, but you have the government stepping in to be the broker. The Biden administration is the broker for negotiations between the railroad companies and their employees. And everybody's cool with that. It's kind of like the government is the head of the railroad industry. I don't know. I don't like that too much. This feels kind of socialistic. It's kind of Moses Mordecai Marx Levy-ish. For those who don't know, that's Karl Marx's real name, Moses Mordecai Marx Levy. Man, this is crazy. And it is noteworthy, as we had a caller yesterday, that's one of the things that the employees were saying is that we needed more time off. But it seems that the remedy is more money. And the union leaders to this point have accepted the negotiation, accepted the offer in principle. So now the unions have to take the offer back to their union members, and the union membership is going to vote on it. And so the crises that is averted in terms of the proposed strike has been held in abeyance to allow the various unions, to submit the offer to their membership for a vote. So that'll be a couple months to allow all members to vote. So I just wanted to give you that update. But it's pretty interesting that, the government steps in as a broker, and not many people raise any concern about that. So the government is a broker. So if I have an issue with my dentist, is the government going to step in and be the negotiator for us? Huh, Sam? All right. This is a story I really, really wanted to get to. And I am greatly disturbed by this story. Before I get into the meat of the story, I want to first mention that the author of this story is Miranda Devine from the New York Post. She is the same reporter who broke the Hunter Biden laptop story in 2020. She has proven herself to be, in my view, a very good reporter. And I am encouraged that there still are reporters like her, which is why I want to take a moment and give her props, because she is demonstrating courage even in the stories that she's breaking, and nobody else is doing these types of things. And so kudos to you, Miss Devine. But the story that we have, and Miranda Devine got the story because she was contacted by whistleblowers at the Department of Justice, and specifically the FBI. And the straw that broke the proverbial camel's back, and Bobby, you'll appreciate this, is that these whistleblowers to a person conveyed to Miranda Devine that they had seen what appeared to be the increasing weaponization of the Department of Justice, in particular the FBI. But when they saw what happened to former President Trump in Mar-a-Lago, that was it for them. That was it for them. Now, I want you to connect these dots because you also have senior level officials who are serving as whistleblowers to, for example, Senator Chuck Grassley from Iowa, explaining to him, the Washington, D.C. office, main office of the FBI undermined the Hunter Biden laptop investigation for the express purposes of putting the kibosh on it. And one of the tools that they sought to employ was to call the Hunter Biden laptop story Russian disinformation. Russian disinformation. Let's go back in our minds a little bit to connect a few other things. Remember, Zuckerberg. What's his first name? I forgot his first name. Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg admitted to Joe Rogan that, we were contacted by the FBI and they warned us about Russian disinformation that could be coming soon. And it kind of looked like what ultimately was a Hunter Biden laptop story. So when we saw it, we immediately responded because, we take the FBI pretty seriously. And do you recall, Jeff, Bobby, do you recall, within 4 days, and honestly, I hadn't thought about this until I heard Miranda Devine's interview today. But within 4 days of the New York Post breaking the Hunter Biden laptop story, you had 50 some odd intelligence officials coming out and saying, oh, this is Russian disinformation. You had 4 former heads of the CIA. Within 4 days to conclude that the New York Post's Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation. Where did they get that language from? Did anybody stop and ask them, what have you reviewed 51 intelligence officials, including 4 heads of the U.S.'s primary spy organization? What evidence did you look at that confirmed for you to allow you to conclude that it's Russian disinformation? It would have taken them, how long do you think it would take 51 people from different places all over the country to come to the same conclusion about a particular set of information? In 4 days, y'all all had the same conclusion that it is specifically this? That dog don't hunt. Well, the story today that we're about to cover will probably connect that final dot as to how they were so quickly all able to come to the same conclusion. Now, Miranda Devine was contacted by whistleblowers at the FBI that said that the FBI was spying on Facebook users' private messages. That Facebook, as a company, or individuals in Facebook, which would allow the company to have plausible deniability, individuals within Facebook specifically looked for private messages that indicated that a user objected to, complained about, or was angry about the 2020 presidential election. When either the Facebook company, and I'm saying either the Facebook company because Facebook has denied it. They said, we didn't do this. But the FBI certainly had the information without any subpoenas, without any legal processes. I mean, there's this, I thought there was a constitutional amendment that said that we couldn't be deprived of life or liberty or property without due process of law. And there's a 4th Amendment, I believe, that protects individual citizens from unreasonable searches and seizures. That when a person has a reasonable expectation of privacy, that the government can't just run up in there taking your stuff. And in case anybody's wondering, private messages, even though you're using the free, social media service, the private messages are supposed to be something different and distinct from your posts and your public posts, hence the term private messages. You think you'd have a reasonable expectation of privacy? Yes, you would. Which would make the government's confiscation of this material without legal processes a violation of your constitutional rights. So either the company at Facebook or employees at Facebook put together these messages and send them to the FBI. What the FBI did with that information after having received it is that they then say, look at this. Let me now go and secure a subpoena to start an investigation, to have legal processes, after already knowing exactly what they're looking for. So it probably could have been, and Miranda Devine even said this, she said most likely the FBI had hacked into her private communications with Rudy Giuliani, learned that the New York Post story about Hunter Biden's laptop was about to drop, and then started making the rounds to all the social media companies, as well as making their rounds to 51 plus intelligence officials. You know, Leon Panetta, John Brennan, you know, all those guys, those sterling beacons of constitutional fidelity, right? And then magically, it's a miracle. 4 days after the story broke, you have 51 people that are intelligence agency, what do you want to call it? Alumni, whatever you want to call it. They all know. They just know. Oh, this is Russian disinformation. Everybody has the same tagline. That happened pretty quickly. Didn't it? Listen to this clip from the New York Post's Miranda Devine explaining the story that I'm discussing right now. It's clip number 1. Go.
There seem to be red flagging private messages of users, American users on Facebook, which are anti-government or anti-authority or might be questioning the 2020 election. Nothing illegal, nothing criminal, nothing violent. And Facebook is spying on those messages, and then without a subpoena, they are forwarding them to the FBI, to their domestic terrorism unit in Washington, D.C. And from there, those messages, those leads are farmed out to various FBI field officers. And they are then supposed to go and get a subpoena and get that information the legal way. But they already know what they're looking for because Facebook's already shown them without due process, without a subpoena, without a warrant, done outside the legal process. And the reason we know this is because there are now whistleblowers that are coming forward from the Department of Justice and the FBI, and they are incredibly courageous. They are people of integrity, and they have decided that their consciences trouble them too much, that they see that the institutions that they loved, federal law enforcement, is being weaponized and politicized, and they are basically being used as pawns to prosecute a political case against Joe Biden's enemies.
Guys, did you hear that? Did you hear that? So you literally have, and let me be clear, so Facebook was contacted as a result of this story. They officially denied participating in it at first. Then 64 minutes later, their spokesperson, let me give you her name, Erica Sacken, who used to be, let me give you her credentials as well. Y'all going to love this. Erica Sacken, who is a D.C.-based crisis response expert who worked initially for Planned Parenthood and then after that worked for Obama for America, who now works as Facebook's leads Facebook's communications on counterterrorism and dangerous organizations and individuals. 64 minutes later, she says, no, you have mischaracterized the story. She first said it was false. Then she said, oh, no, it's mischaracterized. So are you tacitly admitting that what Miranda Devine just said actually happened? You betcha. So, guys, you stop and think about this. You have these things happening. We're turning into the Germany with the Stasi. You know, the Chinese social credit score. You know, it's here, folks. It's not coming. It's here. You have these big tech companies coordinating with the government's law enforcement, funneling your private messages to the FBI's domestic terrorism unit. And I want you to understand something. There were real investigations conducted into individual American citizens based upon this information. And guess what they all came back as? Nothing. You had people that were upset about the election. You had people that had pictures of themselves with guns. And not one of them, because guess what? Had there been one, you better believe you me, they would have been plastered all over the media. Not one of them were found to be involved in any type of violent response or anything like that. Nothing violent, just expressing themselves with true First Amendments. Guys, you need to understand, first, I'm going to say more about this on the other side of the break. You need to understand, when you post and use these big tech tools, these social media things, none of that's private. You need to use it with the mindset, if you're going to continue using it, that probably the government is looking or will be looking at it. Because this story, and what's one of the things that's galling, the things that were looked for by Facebook and sent to the FBI's domestic terrorism agent department was solely concerned about the election. Nothing about Antifa, nothing about burn, loot, murder, none of that. Only people expressing concerns about the constitutional right to free and fair elections, they had their messages sent to the FBI, but none of the Antifa types.
The AFA Resource Center has all your favorite items. Everything from books, movies, shirts, and even hats. Introducing AFA's polyester and twill hats, starting at just $18. Whether you're into fashion, a collector, or you're just having a bad hair day, these hats are just what you need. You can buy one for yourself or a friend. Purchase your AFA hat today at resources.afa.net.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Washington Watch. Coming up on this Friday edition of Washington Watch, last week...
No more tolerance for abusive actions by monopolies.
But is it really just another power grab by the federal government? Parents are not happy with classroom indoctrination and the radical policies they're pushing.
Washington Watch, weekday afternoons at 4 Central and Saturday evenings at 6 Central on American Family Radio.
The Peril of the Middle Way. This is David Wheaton, host of The Christian Worldview. The evangelical movement formed in the early 20th century in an effort to find a middle way between the theological liberalism that had taken over the mainline Protestant denominations and fundamentalism, which strongly repudiated liberalism. Evangelicals thought they could hold to doctrinal convictions in a nicer way than fundamentalists, but 100 years later, evangelicalism is rife with compromise. Paul told Timothy, "Pay close attention to yourself and to your teaching. Persevere in these things, for as you do this, you will ensure salvation both for yourself and for those who hear you." Faithfulness to God is far more important than trying to be attractive to the world. Hear more at thechristianworldview.org, and then join us this weekend for another topic that will sharpen your worldview.
Listen to The Christian Worldview with David Wheaton, Saturday mornings at 8 Central on American Family Radio.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starn. Stand by for news and commentary next.
Take advantage of the warmer weather and come explore Liberty University's campus, ranked number 4 best college campus in America by Niche.com. Join us for Experience LU, an all-day event that shows off our dorm rooms, classrooms, and award-winning dining hall. Or, if you're short on time, attend a 4-hour student-led campus tour to hit the highlights. To learn more or schedule your visit to Liberty University, text Visit LU to 49596. Again, that's Visit LU to 49596.
A high school teacher boasted on social media about creating an explicitly queer space in his taxpayer-funded classroom. The teacher kept his name and location private. He said most days he comes to school wearing stilettos, boasting about standing 6'6" in heels. The teacher also bragged about coming to school in drag and makeup. He said school administrators had no problem with his behavior, and they were just glad he was making a safe space for kids. Now, this guy is a sex and gender revolutionary, using his classroom to indoctrinate and confuse kids. Whatever happened to teaching young people to be good and productive members of society? Whatever happened to reading and writing and math and science? And whatever happened to teachers who used to wear sensible shoes in the workplace? Homeschool your children, America. My new book makes a terrific stocking stuffer, Our Daily Biscuit Devotions with a Drawl, available right now at toddstarns.com.
The Hamilton Corner podcast and one-minute commentaries are available at afr.net. Back to the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner. Abraham Hamilton III here. We will open the phone lines if you'd like to join the show. Anything we discussed today is on the table for your conversation. The number to call is 888-589-8840. The number again to call is 888-589-8840. Now, This story bothers me, because what we are witnessing is, and we've known it. I mean, we've seen the shadow banning. We've seen the throttling down of various pages. I mean, I can tell you, I've been at, a couple of 100,000 people on social media followers for so long. It's like, oh, and you get notifications that new people have followed you. And then it's like, okay, so who stopped following in order to keep that number at the same spot, So I don't even mention those social media companies at all anymore, because we have streaming.afa.net up. And so if you want to watch the program, you can do so by going to streaming.afa.net. But you should assume, guys, that the government has or will look at whatever you post. You should. I mean, these are private messages. I'm not talking about public Facebook posts. I'm not talking about even posts to your friends on your Facebook friends list. I'm talking about private messages that the government, the FBI, had a Facebook employee or employees looking specifically for people that were upset about the presidential election, and those private messages were sent to the FBI's domestic terrorism department. Now, that's one of the major takeaways from this story. The domestic terrorism department. Yeah. The other takeaway you should notice is that I've said this before. My disdain for the FBI is not total. It's not comprehensive. It's not every single FBI agent. It's not every single FBI agent. But it's enough of them, including those in high-ranking positions. Well, now what you're seeing happen is some of these FBI officials, including some in high-ranking positions, that they've had enough. They've had enough. I mean, Miranda Devine sources are saying, man, listen, these companies, the Tweety Birds, the fascist books, the Tubes of Views, the Metas, the Alphabets, these people have no concern for the American people, nor the interest of our nation. They're globalists. They're globalists. And the observation that even if you wanted to give the greatest benefit of the doubt possible, which is an exercise of futility, frankly, to the FBI, but it's an exercise of futility. So if you're concerned with squelching domestic terrorism, you don't think you should be concerned about people planning Antifa riots? What about people that are planning things like, I don't know, assassinating a Supreme Court justice because they don't like the Roe versus Wade being overturned? Any of that? No, that what? Only thing that's being sent are people expressing concerns about the presidential election. Man. Guys, we are living in, and I remember being, even when I was in law school, I graduated law school in 2006. I did not imagine that we would be at the place where we are now in our country, where you literally have federal official governmental apparatus being turned against the American people, and the Department of Justice being weaponized to literally go after the opponents of the J. Robinette administration. Guys, we are here. This is the stuff of Nazi Germany. This is the stuff of communist China. This is the stuff of communist Russia. This is the stuff. Guys, we are here. This is happening. These things have happened. These messages were confiscated and sent to the FBI going all the way back to November of 2020. They've been doing it. This is a huge problem. I'll give the number again, 888-589-8840. I want to give you one more thing, then we'll get to the phone lines. Public service announcement. Harvard University is ordering its students to attend mandatory training on using the correct pronouns. Because using, they would say the incorrect, I would say the correct pronouns, constitute abuse and could lead to disciplinary action. Harvard University requires each student and is requiring its staff to undergo Title IX policy training, and the university states that potential violations of its broad and ambiguous Title IX policy may lead to termination, dismissal, expulsion, or revocation of tenure. Now, I just want you to stop for a moment and put your thinking caps on and go with me for a moment. So we have one of America's bright lights, institutions of higher anointing, saying that we require you as a matter of policy to use incorrect grammar, incorrect biology as a matter of social etiquette, or else. Higher learning. Higher learning. More high than learning. Guys, look. I've said before, some of you heard me say it, some of my children may go to college. Not all of my children are going to go to college. The things that will determine whether or not my children go to college will be what is God leading them to be, what is God calling them to do, and whether or not that requires them to have some form of degree. But many of my children will be pursuing courses of life, income generation, and life stewardship that will have them absent from these miseducation indoctrination camps. In the name of social etiquette, you are going to completely pervert language and ignore biological reality. Guys, this is too much. This is too much. To the phone lines we go. We'll first start with William in Missouri. William, will you please turn your radio down? Because it has feedback and it causes delay and all kinds of technological problems on our end.
Okay, how's that?
That is much better. Go right ahead, William. Thank you for calling the program, by the way.
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to say that Biden, Harris, and Schumacher, whatever his name is, have all proved one thing beyond a shadow of a doubt in this great country, that you do not have to hang from a tree to be a nut.
Did he do that, William? Did you say that out loud? Oh, William, I like it. Oh, I'm going to give you credit for that one, but I'm going to use it. I like it. William said that. Kamala Harris, Mr. Robinette, and I like what your name is, Schumacher. Yeah, Chucky Ducky Schumacher. They all prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that you don't have to dangle from a tree limb to be a nut. If you going to have a comparison for the Almond Joy or the Mounds, I think the whole country will join me in saying, we don't feel like any nuts. Let's go with the Mounds. Thank you, William, for your call and your comment and your introduction of the jovial belly laugh that I needed on this fine evening. We'll go next to Texas, where Sabrina is on the line. Sabrina, thank you for calling the Hamilton Corner. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. I have two questions. How do we change it to where any politician can only run 2 terms, meaning 2 years, and then a second term at the same? And then where else can we go where we can use something other than Facebook to not be monitored?
Great question, Sabrina. Thank you for your call and your question. So first, the answer to your question would depend on which elective office that you're talking about. Are you talking about federally elected officials? United States representatives, United States senators? If you are, that will require amendments to the U.S. Constitution. So the terms and the durations and the ability to run or not run, those are limited. Those are designed and defined by the U.S. Constitution. So to change those would require amendments to our Constitution. Now, there are several ways to do that. The most conventional, or the most popular, I should say, way to amend the Constitution is having a bill filed in Congress itself. So let's say started in the House, passed in the House, but it would require 3/4 of the House in order to amend the Constitution. It would have to pass in the Senate with 3/4 of the Senate agreeing. Then that would have to be sent to the president for ratification. If it passed that process, it would have to be sent to the states for ratification. All right? That's how the Constitution itself was ratified. That's how the Bill of Rights and the existing amendments that we have, all of them were passed that way. But that is not the only way to do so. You also could have the states themselves, through their state legislatures, to declare conventions. Now, you'd have to have 3/4 of the states to do so. And there's an organization that is a move for this. I'm actually planning to have the head of the Convention of the States movement on the program in the near future because I was reluctant to embrace the idea initially. And my primary concern was that if you have a convention of the states, where you have all these states proposing amendments to the Constitution, it could be a big free-for-all that ends up way worse than where we are now. But considering where we are now, I don't think that anymore. I think the convention of the states may be the only way to make the massive adjustments that need to be made at the federal level. So that is the additional way to do it, to initiate basically a movement of constitutional conventions at the state level, which could be done. Now, if you're talking about state officials, then the various state constitutions would govern. Like, for example, in Virginia, they only allow their governors to serve one term, and that's it. You have various state legislatures that limit the terms of their legislators there. So it would vary based on what office you're talking about. But that's generally what you're discussing. Now, concerning Facebook, I would just ask, what did you do before you got on Facebook? I understand the convenience. I understand, a lot of people, who are not even politically involved, they like to use Facebook to keep up with family that live far away, share photos and things of that nature. You have all kinds of options available that are not Facebook. But I will tell you, one of the challenges is that as these other alternatives become more and more popular, they end up being bought by Facebook. Like, I'll give you an example. Instagram. Instagram was initially created as a rival to Facebook. Well, guess what happened? Facebook made an offer Instagram couldn't refuse. Threw about $8 billion at the Instagram startup from scratch people, and they took it. So now Facebook owns Instagram. The same thing with WhatsApp. That used to be an encryption app that was meant to rival Facebook, but specifically out of privacy concerns. Well, guess who owns WhatsApp now? Facebook. It may take a little more effort, but you may want to consider, what did we do before Facebook? We still live. We still made it, didn't we? And I'm not trying to provoke anybody to be paranoid, because you can still use it if you choose to use it, but use it in such a way where you know that the government may get access to what you're sharing there. So you may want to limit how you use it. Just a thought. All right, back to the phone lines. We'll go next to Virginia, Bobby's old stomping grounds, where Lee is on the line. Lee, thank you for calling the Hamilton Corner. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. I wanted to thank you first for all that you do, because I've listened for the last 2 or 3 years and maybe 2.5. And I've been so impressed. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. God bless you for your intelligence and your wit and your humor and the way you put things. So what I wanted to quickly add or share tonight was, because of the previous gentleman's comment, you know how it's funny. I might be too old for most of your listeners as a reference, in terms of the fairy tales or fables from the past. It's funny how sometimes life will mimic, fiction. So about a year and a half ago, it started hitting me, especially in early 2020, about the Emperor's New Clothes. I've heard that one already mentioned. But the one I haven't heard mentioned, if you remember Winkin' and Blinkin' and Nod.
Yeah.
Yes. So you know who, I'm like, this is amazing. I've never heard it in an editorial, and maybe it's being, right. So the Winkin' and the Blinkin', you know who Blinkin' would be?
Go ahead.
Winkin' would be Kamala Harris.
Yes.
And then the nod, the gentleman that's nodding off, could be our wonderful Mr. Biden. So I just feel like I wanted to give you another laugh. But what really bothers me in my heart, because I do believe in Jesus, is that the frustration of helping people to know how to stand up in the right ways so that we don't get silenced. I think that's where everybody's really frustrated.
That's a really good point, Lee. Thank you for that. Yes. So the call to contend without being contentious doesn't mean that we are belligerent, but we must be resolute. That resolution looks like being steadfast, unmovable, ever abounding in the ways and the word of our Lord, which requires us to speak up. One of the freedoms that God sovereignly has afforded us to date is the freedom of speech. We have to use it before we lose it. The more we use it, the less imperiled our usage of it will be. But we have to utilize it. Stand up, speak up. Thank you, Lee. You brought some joy to my heart tonight.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family